Our first constitution was enforced on 23rd March 1956, and that constitution could not remain for more than 2 years. And the constitution of 1956 was abrogated on 7th of October 1958, and martial law was imposed in the country. Today we will analyze the reasons for which the martial law was imposed, or the reasons for promulgation of martial law, and why and how Ayub Khan came into power. The first reason was the misgovernance and public corruption. From 1947 to 58, you can see that the governments were not well organized. The prime ministers were frequently changing, ministries both in central government as well as in provincial governments were frequently changing, and they were involved in corruption and malpractices. And because of that, because of that, the government had lost the confidence among masses. And the next was the threat of losing presidential elections, 1958, by President Mirza. When the Constitution of 1956 was enforced on 23rd March 1956, the last Governor General, Skandar Mirza, became the President of Pakistan. Now he had to take a vote of confidence from assemblies, and he was not confident that he could win those presidential elections. And because of that threat, and because of that lack of confidence that he could win the presidential elections, he himself dismissed the assemblies in October 1958, and this became a reason for promulgation of martial law in 1958. Dismissal of prime ministers. From 1956 to 1958, in these 2 years, three prime ministers changed. For example, in 1956, when constitution was implemented, the prime minister was Chaudhry Muhammad Ali. He was dismissed, and Hussein Shahid Sarwardi became prime minister, and then Malik Feroz Khan Noon. So, within a span of 2 years, three prime ministers were dismissed. This make a sense, or a idea that the political people are not well capable of running governmental affairs. uh, because of that, or this become one of the major reasons for the promulgation of martial law. And delay in general elections. From 1947 to 1958, no general elections were held in Pakistan. And after promulgation of new constitution in 1956, it was mandatory to hold general elections, but the government did not held general elections in the country. Rather, the Constituent Assembly, which was elected in 1954, and whose task was to just to make a constitution, they declared themselves as the legislative assembly of the country and continue their new function without taking the mandate from the public. And because of this delay in general elections, the people were start thinking that the government is not going to announce general elections. As a result, the confidence on government was lost among masses, and this became reason for the promulgation of martial law in 1958. Next was the suspension of the writ of the constitution and dissolution of parliament. On 7th of October 1958, President Iskandar Mirza himself had dissolved the constitution and parliament, and called Ayub Khan to impose martial law in the country. This was one of the major reasons for promulgation of martial law in the country, because the president, who was the custodian of the constitution and parliament, himself dissolved the constitution and the National Assembly. And canal water dispute was also responsible, because after 1947 we were having certain disputes on water with India, and civilian government was not or civilian government was failed to resolve that water dispute. And because of this, military get a chance to come into power. Your question is, how threat of losing presidential election in 1958 led to the promulgation of martial law in 1958. And you have to submit this assignment by tomorrow. Thank you for joining. Take care. Goodbye.